You may know me from watching Chopped. We're gonna make some gnudi today. Gnudi essentially is the interior of a ravioli without the pasta on the outside. It's essentially cheese that's just held together with a little small amount of flour. We're gonna toss it with some peas and mushrooms and a beautiful butter sauce with Parmesan cheese, and it is a thing of absolute beauty. I hope you love it as much as I do. We start with some ricotta cheese. This is sheep's milk ricotta. We wrap it in cheesecloth and we tie it and we put it in a strainer and then over a bowl and we let it sit overnight. Take this ricotta out of the cheesecloth, put it right in the bowl. So, sheep's milk ricotta, look at how beautiful and dry and fluffy. The texture itself, if you look at this beautiful creamy texture, that is essentially what we want the interior of the gnudi to look like. What we're gonna do is we're gonna add 2 egg yolks directly to this mixture. We could just mix it with a rubber spatula. I mean, we don't need to put it in a machine unless we're really making a lot of it. It's unnecessary to put it in a machine, but hand mixed is fine. 2 egg yolks. We don't want the whites because that would require too much moisture. We're gonna add a little bit of Parmesan cheese. I have some mascarpone here also. With the mascarpone cheese, I just absolutely love the richness that this provides. It's a little unorthodox to add mascarpone to these things, but I love it and I'm unapologetic about it. How about that? So a little bit of panko. The key for me inside this is if there's any residual moisture, the panko, these breadcrumbs, will absorb that residual moisture. It's a really important tip that I like to add. Again, it's not necessarily part of a tradition. It's just something that I've learned along the way and I want to share with you. I'm gonna add a little bit of salt, about a teaspoon of salt, give or take. I want every aspect of this to taste delicious. So I want to make sure that when you're building it, you're seasoning as you go, just like I am, so that everything tastes great. That's the goal, hopefully. And then flour. We're gonna add just enough flour, as I said, to bind it together. 00 flour is the flour that we use in pasta because it's no reference to a wheat content of pasta or anything else. It is a very, very finely ground flour. And what happens, the reason why I like to use it so much is because the palatability, it is so supple when you're using it for anything, whether it be cookies, pasta, any baked goods. 00 flour really adds a completely different textural contrast to what something like an all-purpose flour would be. So we're gonna mix this up. It's ready to go. We are going to start to make some little gnudi balls. As I said, the interior of a ravioli without the actual pasta on the outside of it. So what I like to do is about 15 grams, basically 15 grams, we're gonna put that in there just like this. And the reason why we do that, now, you don't have to weigh them, but it is important to identify the size. So one of the things I like to do is I put them in the semolina and let them sit on the bed of semolina. And as they sit, particularly overnight, if you put them in a refrigerator close to where the fan is in the refrigerator, they'll dry out and create a beautiful skin on the outside of the gnudi. So that skin will create a beautiful exterior when you're cooking it, kind of poaching it in the pasta cooking liquid. And the interior will remain soft and creamy and unctuous and beautiful, which is the goal of a gnudi, obviously. So they're dumplings, ricotta dumplings, essentially. What you're really gonna need with this is to identify something that's uniform, whatever you're comfortable with, cook it accordingly. And I have, again, that semolina, and I'm very gently gonna roll these into perfect little balls. You just wanna roll them like this, get that semolina on the exterior, and then again, put them inside the cooler, let them dry out overnight. Just let that exterior kind of come together, and you'll see the final product, the method to the madness, the reason why we do all that. So, again, give or take 15 grams, you can make that. All right, so we're gonna make the butter sauce. So This butter sauce, we start with milk. I have a pot here. We're gonna scald it, very hot temperature. The reason why we scald this milk, this is really important. When you're scalding milk, it maintains its sweetness. If you heat it at a very low temperature, don't ask me why, it doesn't maintain its sweetness. And one of the keys to using this dairy is you want that inherent sweetness from the dairy itself. I have a little bit of cornstarch here, about a tablespoon of cornstarch, 2 tablespoons of milk. Now, this is a little unorthodox, but you use your finger for this, right? This is called a slurry. This slurry with the cornstarch is made to thicken this milk. I use my finger because I want to make sure that there's no residual lumps inside this. So I'm going to scald that milk. It's going to come to a quick boil. I'm going to whisk in this slurry, this cornstarch mixture, in order to thicken that milk. And then we're going to monte the butter inside of that. And monteing the butter strictly means we're going to whisk it in slowly, making sure that it's incorporated and creating this beautiful sauce. So the milk is starting to scald. I'm going to add a pinch of salt to it because, as I said, we want to make sure that we're always seasoning as we go. So milk is scalded. You see that? I'm going to turn this down to a simmer. That milk is nice and hot. I'm just going to add this. So with the usage of the cornstarch in here, it'll help us along. So you see how thick that is? See the texture of that? We're going to add this butter piece by piece, whisking it in slowly. This butter is a little cooler than room temperature. If it's too warm, it's going to break. We don't want that. And I have boiling water here also. If I need to adjust this sauce, if it gets too thick, we could always adjust it. But we want to whisk it the whole time. It is very important that this is constantly in motion. See that sauce is coming together. It really is a beautiful butter sauce. We're not going to use all this butter for every portion. So it's a lot of butter, but it's really good with the gnudi, you'll see. So it may seem painstaking to you to add this butter the way we're doing it, one piece at a time, but it makes sense to do it because if you add it all at once, it could break. You don't want it to break. So it's really important, the method to the madness, so to speak. You want to add this nice and slowly. It's not that much time, it's not that bad. Sometimes patience is the real virtue here. So that sauce is done, butter. I'm gonna add a touch of hot water just to make it a little more liquidy, just a touch. A little bit goes a long way. So you see that perfect texture, look at that. Silky, smooth. So we're good, we're gonna go to the sauce now. I have some boiling salted water. We are gonna add enough salt to this water so that it tastes like broth. So it's about 1.5 gallons of water here. We're gonna use this water for the actual sauce of the pasta so that we don't want it to be overly salty. We have some mushrooms here. Shiitake mushrooms, domestic mushrooms, cremini mushrooms, oyster mushrooms, any mixture that you have, anything seasonal. Now, if I were in one of my restaurants and I want to be a little bit fancy, I would add maybe a touch of truffle butter or fresh truffles to this. These are black truffles. They're beautiful, they're delicious. They're also expensive and unnecessary. If you want to identify that next level, then this is the way to go. If you don't want to, there's no judgment here. That's not what we're doing. We're having fun, we're cooking some delicious food. All right. Okay, so saute pan, put that on a medium heat. Extra virgin olive oil, hot pan. We're just gonna add enough oil to cover the bottom of this pan. Hot pan, extra virgin olive oil, mushrooms inside. I'm gonna add a pinch of salt to that, a little squeeze of pepper. As that's cooking, we have some peas here, some English peas. You could use snap peas. You could seasonalize this dish as you'd like to. This is not etched in stone. The most important aspect is the actual gnudi itself. So, speaking of which, these are the gnudi. We're not gonna cook them all right now, but the gnudi is done. We're gonna add the peas to this momentarily. You could add a little bit of tarragon to this right now if you'd like. You could add some thyme sprigs to it, maybe a pinch of crushed red pepper. I'm gonna add another pinch of salt here. I'm also gonna add right now, off the fire, I take this off the fire because if I add this liquid to the pan, it's gonna flame up. And that flame is gonna completely change the flavor profile of what's in this pan. So off the fire, a little bit of water, just to stop this cooking process. All good, right? Slows it down, mushrooms are cooked, peas are cooked, everything's good. We're gonna keep that off to the side. I am now gonna drop the gnudi in the pasta water, right? We're gonna add these gnudi to it, and I'll pull them out with a slotted spoon later as well. Because they're delicate, right? And we want them to be delicate. We want them to be cooked just enough in the water that they finish cooking in the pan itself. So, I have the butter sauce here. We're gonna add this butter sauce directly to the mushrooms and the peas. I'm gonna turn this fire down to a very low simmer and just let these gnudi kind of sit on top of this sauce. Just in that sauce. And what I like to do with this is that once it's like that, I kind of baste them a little bit. Now, I shut the fire off. Parmesan cheese, we're gonna grate right over the top of this. And again, once we add the cheese, this should see no more fire. The cheese is the finish. We don't wanna cook the cheese. All right. Now, beautiful dumplings. Look at how delicate and gorgeous these are. Oh, beautiful. Now, these are so rich and so yummy. I think you're gonna really enjoy these. Again, if I wanted to add the fresh truffles, I would do so right now, right over the top. Feeling fancy, we'll just add a touch of these, just to grate over the top, just like this. So we have this dumpling, sheep's milk ricotta. The texture of those is exactly where you want them to be. It has a really nice flavor profile. The butter sauce is exactly what you want. The peas and the mushrooms add so much flavor. The truffles here are beautiful, but again, they are not necessary. Don't feel like you can't make this if you don't have truffles. All those beautiful flavors, the very delicate flavors of what this is, just add up to the sum of all its parts, which is delicious texture, really forward flavors. It's just a bowl of deliciousness that's gonna make your family very happy.